The last thing Lyah expected when a half-naked, ridiculously handsome man stumbled into her hotel room wasn't the mumbled apology that followed, but the low, possessive growl that rumbled from his chest when he tried to leave, a growl that seemed to come from something not quite human. She had been in the midst of a silent, one-woman pity party, clad in her favorite worn-out band t-shirt and a pair of ridiculously soft pajama bottoms. The city's symphony of sirens and distant traffic was her only companion until the click of the lock on her door being disengaged had her heart leaping into her throat. He was a vision of sculpted perfection, a walking, breathing masterpiece that would have made Michelangelo weep. His jeans hung low on his hips, revealing the tantalizing V of his abdomen, and his dark, tousled hair looked like he'd just run his hands through it in a fit of passion or frustration. But it was his eyes that held her captive, a startling shade of amber that seemed to glow with an inner fire, a wildness that was both captivating and unnerving. He blinked, his gaze slowly focusing on her, and a wave of confusion washed over his handsome features. "This isn't. I'm so sorry," he stammered, his voice a deep baritone that vibrated through the suddenly still air of the room. He took a step back, his hand already reaching for the doorknob, but then it happened. A growl, deep and guttural, resonated from his chest, a sound so primal it sent a shiver down Lyah's spine. His hand froze on the doorknob, his knuckles turning white as he gripped it. A look of sheer bewilderment, mingled with an almost painful intensity, contorted his face. He was trying to leave, she could see the strain in his muscles, the taut line of his jaw, but it was as if an invisible force was holding him in place. Lyah, who had been poised to dial security, found her fingers hovering over her phone, her fear momentarily eclipsed by an overwhelming sense of curiosity. There was an energy emanating from him, a raw, untamed power that, instead of frightening her, seemed to soothe a part of her soul she hadn't even realized was restless. The man, whose name she would soon learn was Caden, let out a shaky breath, his amber eyes locking with hers. The inner turmoil was evident in their depths, a silent battle being waged within him. I can't leave," he confessed, his voice laced with a mixture of awe and desperation. He didn't understand it, this magnetic pull that had taken root in his very being the moment his eyes had landed on her. His wolf, the beast that resided within him, had recognized her, had claimed her in a heartbeat, and now it refused to let him walk away. He was a creature of logic and control, the alpha of his pack, yet in this moment, he was at the mercy of an ancient, undeniable instinct. Lyah, a woman who curated art and lived her life with a meticulous and pragmatic approach, found herself in a situation that defied all logic. She should have been screaming, should have been running, but instead, she found herself taking a tentative step closer. The air between them crackled with an unspoken energy, a silent communication that transcended words. She could feel his struggle as if it were her own, the invisible chains that bound him to her room, to her. The city outside, with its noise and its chaos, faded into a distant hum, leaving only the two of them in this bubble of surreal intimacy. The chapter of her life that had been predictable and orderly had just been irrevocably torn apart by the arrival of a man who was more than he seemed, a man whose very soul, it appeared, refused to be separated from hers. He finally let go of the doorknob, his hand falling to his side in a gesture of surrender. Leaning against the doorframe, his gaze never leaving hers, he whispered, the words hanging in the air like a promise and a warning, "I don't know what this is, but my soul won't let me walk away from you." Chapter 2, The Unseen Chain. The silence that followed his declaration was a living entity, a pulsating presence that filled the space between them. Lyah's mind, usually a whirlwind of organized thoughts and to-do lists, was a maelstrom of confusion and a strange, burgeoning excitement. The rational part of her brain screamed at her to call for help, to get this handsome, yet clearly unstable, man out of her room. But a deeper, more ancient part of her, a part she hadn't known existed, was captivated. It was the part of her that was drawn to the raw emotion in his amber eyes, the palpable struggle that radiated from him, the undeniable pull that seemed to be drawing her closer to him with every passing second. She made a decision then, a choice that would undoubtedly alter the course of her life. With a steadying breath, she gestured towards the plush armchair in the corner of the room. You can sit," she offered, her voice barely a whisper. Caden looked at the chair, then back at her, a flicker of gratitude in his eyes. He moved with a predatory grace, his every step deliberate and silent, as if he were a panther stalking its prey. He sank into the armchair, his large frame dwarfing the piece of furniture. The tension in the room remained, a taut wire of unspoken questions and burgeoning desires. He was still struggling. She could see it in the way he clenched and unclenched his fists, the way his jaw was set in a hard line. To break the silence, to unravel the mystery that was Caden, Lyah began to talk. She told him about the exhibition she was curating, her passion for art a safe harbor in this sea of uncertainty. She spoke of the artists she admired, the stories their creations told, and the way a single brushstroke could convey a universe of emotion. And Caden listened. He listened with an intensity that made her feel as though she were the only person in the world. His gaze never wavered, his amber eyes seeming to absorb her every word, her every gesture. When she paused, he would ask a question, a thoughtful, insightful query that revealed he was not just hearing her, but truly understanding her. And as she spoke, a strange thing happened. The fear that had been a cold knot in her stomach began to dissipate, replaced by a warmth that spread through her veins. She felt seen. Truly and completely seen, in a way she never had before. Emboldened by his attentiveness, she found herself sharing more, her carefully constructed walls beginning to crumble. She told him about her recent heartbreak, the betrayal that had left her cynical and guarded. She spoke of her dreams, the ones she kept hidden away, afraid to even admit them to herself. And through it all, Caden remained a silent, steady presence, his unwavering gaze a beacon of acceptance. He, in turn, began to share pieces of himself. He spoke of his love for the untamed wilderness, for the feeling of the earth beneath his bare feet, for the symphony of the forest at night. He talked about his family, the fierce loyalty and unwavering love that bound them together, a bond that sounded more like a pack than a family. He spoke of feeling like an old soul in a world that was constantly rushing forward, a sentiment that resonated deep within Lyah. He danced around the truth of his nature, speaking in metaphors and half-truths, yet Lyah felt a strange sense of understanding, as if his words were painting a picture that her soul, if not her mind, could comprehend. At one point, driven by a thirst brought on by hours of talking, Lyah rose to get a glass of water from the minibar. As she moved, Caden was on his feet in an instant, a primal instinct to be near her overriding his conscious control. The space between them shrank, the air crackling with an electric charge. He was so close she could feel the heat radiating from his skin, could see the flecks of gold in his amber eyes. The urge to reach out and touch him, to trace the lines of his sculpted chest, was so strong it was almost painful. He seemed to be feeling it too, his breath catching in his throat, his hands clenched at his sides as if to restrain himself. The moment was broken by the chirping of birds outside her window, a gentle reminder that the world was still turning, that the sun was beginning to rise on a day that was sure to be unlike any other. The spell was broken, and they both took a step back, the invisible chain that bound them stretching but not breaking. As the first rays of dawn painted the sky in hues of pink and gold, Lyah looked at the man who had stumbled into her room and, in the span of a single night, had become the undeniable center of her universe. "Who are you really?" she whispered, the question hanging in the air, a silent promise of the secrets yet to be revealed. Chapter 3: The Whisper of the Wolf. The morning light, soft and unforgiving, streamed through the large window of the hotel room, illuminating the unspoken tension that hung in the air. The intimacy of their shared night, a night of whispered confessions and unspoken desires, now gave way to the awkward reality of their situation. Caden, despite the new day, was still a prisoner in her room, the unseen chain that bound him to her as strong as ever. And Lyah, with the opening of the most important exhibition of her career looming, had a choice to make. She could either leave him here, a handsome, enigmatic stranger in her hotel room, or she could take him with her. The thought of leaving him was surprisingly painful, a dull ache in her chest that she couldn't explain. "You can't just stay here," she said, more to herself than to him. "I have to go to the gallery." A look of what could only be described as panic flashed in his eyes. "I'm coming with you," he stated, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Being this far away from you is difficult." He didn't elaborate, but Lyah could see the truth of his words in the way he was already on his feet, his body humming with a restless energy. She reluctantly agreed, a part of her thrilled at the prospect of spending more time with him, another part terrified of the implications. They established a set of ground rules, a flimsy attempt to maintain a semblance of normalcy in a situation that was anything but. He was to be her assistant, a believable cover story for his constant presence by her side. At the gallery, Lyah was in her element. Surrounded by the art she loved, she was a whirlwind of motion and quiet authority, her earlier vulnerability replaced by a confident professionalism. She directed the lighting, oversaw the placement of the final pieces, and charmed the gallery staff with her easy grace and sharp wit. And through it all, Caden was a silent, watchful presence at her side. He saw a side of her that was even more captivating than the woman in the worn-out band t-shirt. He saw her passion, her intelligence, her unwavering dedication to her craft, and with every passing moment, the mating bond, the unseen chain that tied his wolf to her, grew stronger, more unbreakable. His heightened senses, a gift and a curse of his werewolf nature, were on high alert in the bustling gallery. He could hear the frantic beating of a young artist's heart as she nervously awaited Lyra's verdict on her work. He could smell the faint scent of fear on the gallery owner as he worried about the success of the exhibition. And he saw what no one else did. A heavy, abstract sculpture, a masterpiece of twisted metal, was precariously balanced on its pedestal, a loose fixture hidden from view. He discreetly pointed it out to Lyah, his voice a low murmur in her ear. "That one," he said, his gaze fixed on the sculpture, "it's not secure." Lyah, trusting the certainty in his voice, had the staff check it, and to their astonishment, they found that he was right. The sculpture had been moments away from a disastrous fall. She looked at him then, a mixture of gratitude and suspicion in her eyes. How could he have known? The incident was momentarily forgotten as they were interrupted by the arrival of Marcus, a rival gallery owner with a reputation for being as slick as he was ruthless. He oozed a smarmy charm that set Lyra's teeth on edge. He approached her, his eyes raking over her with an appreciative, yet dismissive gaze. "Lyah, darling," he purred, his voice dripping with condescension. "Another one of your interesting little shows. I do hope it's more successful than your last." Before Lyah could utter a scathing retort, a low, menacing growl emanated from Caden's chest. It was a sound so soft that only she and Marcus, who was standing closest to him, could hear it. But it was a sound that carried the weight of 1,000 predators, a promise of violence that made the hairs on Marcus's arms stand on end. He paled, his smug smile faltering, and with a mumbled excuse, he practically fled from their presence. Lyah turned to Caden, her heart pounding in her chest. "What was that?" she demanded, her voice a hushed whisper. "How did you do that?" The time for half-truths and evasions was over. He could no longer hide the beast that resided within him. He looked at her then, his amber eyes seeming to blaze with an inner fire, a flicker of gold dancing in their depths. The mask of civility he wore for the human world was beginning to slip, revealing the raw, untamed power that lay just beneath the surface. "There's more to me than you can see, Lyah," he said, his voice a low, rumbling growl that sent a shiver of both fear and excitement down her spine. "And that more recognizes you as its own." Chapter 4. The Scent of Danger. The weight of his words, of the unspoken truth that hung between them, was a tangible thing. Lyah, a woman who dealt in facts and figures, in the tangible reality of paint on canvas, was now faced with a reality that was far beyond her comprehension. And yet, as she looked into his golden-flecked amber eyes, she knew, with a certainty that defied all logic, that he was telling the truth. The fear that had been a constant, low-level hum in the back of her mind was now a roaring crescendo, but intertwined with it was a thread of exhilarating, undeniable excitement. She was standing on the precipice of a world she had never known existed, and a part of her, the part that had always yearned for something more than her perfectly curated life, was ready to jump. They returned to the hotel in a charged silence, the unspoken questions a chasm between them. As soon as the door to her room clicked shut, Lyah turned to him, her arms crossed over her chest, her expression a mixture of apprehension and determination. "Tell me," she said, her voice unwavering. "Tell me everything." Caden knew that the time for secrets was over. He couldn't keep her in the dark any longer, not when the bond between them was growing stronger with every passing moment, not when the danger that was an inherent part of his world could now be a danger to her as well. He had to show her, to make her understand the truth of what he was, of what they were destined to be. "Come with me," he said, his voice gentle yet firm. "There's a place where I can be myself, where I can show you without frightening you." He led her out of the city, his hand a warm, protective presence on the small of her back. They drove until the city lights were a distant memory, replaced by the towering silhouettes of ancient trees and the symphony of the wilderness at night. He took her to a secluded clearing, a place bathed in the soft, ethereal glow of the rising moon. The air here was different, alive with the sense of pine and damp earth, with a palpable energy that seemed to hum in harmony with the beat of Lyra's own heart. Under the watchful gaze of the moon, he began to tell her his story. He spoke of a lineage as old as the mountains that surrounded them, of a people who walked among humans but were not entirely human themselves. He spoke of the shifters, the werewolves, the children of the moon. He told her of the primal spirit that resided within him, the wolf that was as much a part of him as his human heart. And he told her of the mating bond, an unbreakable, sacred connection that tied his wolf's soul to hers, a bond that had been forged the moment he had stumbled into her hotel room, a bond that was both a blessing and a curse. And then, with a deep breath and a look of unwavering trust in his eyes, he asked for her consent. "I need to show you," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "But I won't do it unless you're ready." Lyah, her heart pounding in her chest, gave a single, decisive nod. And then she watched, her breath catching in her throat, as the man she was undeniably falling for began to change. It was a transformation both terrifying and beautiful, a symphony of shifting bones and stretching muscles. The man she knew was gone, and in his place stood a magnificent wolf, its fur the color of midnight, its eyes the same intelligent, soulful amber that she had come to know so well. Instead of the scream that she thought would surely erupt from her throat, a profound sense of wonder filled her. This was not a monster, not a beast of nightmare. This was Caden. His wolf, a creature of breathtaking power and grace, took a cautious step towards her, its gaze never leaving hers. She could feel its uncertainty, its fear of her rejection. And in that moment, all of her own fear vanished, replaced by an overwhelming sense of love and acceptance. She reached out a trembling hand and laid it on the wolf's head, her fingers sinking into its thick, soft fur. A low, contented rumble emanated from its chest, a sound that vibrated through her very being. Their moment of peaceful connection was shattered by a new scent on the wind, a scent that was sharp and menacing, a scent of danger. Caden's wolf was instantly on alert, its body tensing, a low, warning growl rumbling in its chest. From the shadows of the surrounding trees, another wolf emerged. This one was leaner, its fur matted and scarred, its eyes cold and calculating. There was no mistaking the hostile intent in its posture, the silent challenge in its gaze. Caden's wolf moved to stand protectively in front of Lyah, a living, breathing shield between her and the threat that had just emerged from the darkness. The peaceful clearing had become a battleground, and Lyah knew, with a chilling certainty, that her life would never be the same. Chapter 5. The Mark of the Moon. The rogue wolf, a creature of pure, unadulterated malice, circled them with a predatory grace, its lips curled back in a silent snarl, revealing a set of yellowed, menacing teeth. The air was thick with a tension so palpable it was almost suffocating. A primal fear, cold and sharp, tried to take root in Lyra's heart, but she pushed it down, her gaze fixed on the magnificent creature that stood between her and the encroaching danger. Her trust in Caden, in his wolf, was absolute, an unshakable foundation in this world of shifting realities. She stood her ground, her small act of bravery a silent declaration of her allegiance, a testament to the bond that had already been forged between them. The rogue, sensing the unbreakable wall of their connection, finally broke the standoff, lunging forward with a guttural roar. What followed was a brutal, primal ballet of tooth and claw, a dance of violence under the pale, watchful eye of the moon. Lyah could only watch, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs, as the two massive creatures clashed. She saw the raw, untamed power of Caden's wolf, the ferocity that was born of a primal need to protect, to defend what was his. And she saw the unwavering determination in his amber eyes, a promise that he would not fail, that he would not let any harm come to her. The battle was swift and brutal, a whirlwind of black and grey fur, of snarling jaws and flashing claws. Caden was the larger of the two, his movements more fluid, more controlled. He was a warrior, a protector, and the rogue, driven by a desperate, wild hunger, was no match for him. With a final, decisive move, Caden's wolf pinned the rogue to the ground, its powerful jaws closing around the other's throat. The rogue let out a final, pained whimper before falling still. The clearing was silent once more, the only sound the heavy panting of Caden's wolf and the frantic beating of Lyra's own heart. The immediate danger had passed, But the aftermath of the battle was stark and brutal. Caden's wolf was victorious, but not unscathed. A deep gash on its shoulder was bleeding freely, staining its dark fur a deeper shade of crimson. With a pained whine, the magnificent wolf began to shift back, its massive form shrinking, its bones rearranging themselves until the man she loved stood before her, naked and vulnerable, the moonlight painting his skin in shades of silver and shadow. The gash on his shoulder was a raw, angry wound, but even as she watched, the edges of it had already begun to knit themselves back together, a testament to the incredible healing abilities of his kind. Without a moment's hesitation, Lyah rushed to his side. She tore a strip of fabric from the bottom of her own shirt, her hands surprisingly steady as she fashioned a makeshift bandage. Her touch was gentle, her movements sure and steady as she cleaned the wound as best she could and tied the fabric securely in place. It was a small, simple act, but in the aftermath of such primal violence, it was a profound gesture of tenderness, of care, a silent declaration that she was not afraid, that she was here by his side, no matter what. As she finished tying the knot, the moonlight, as if bestowing its blessing upon them, illuminated a faint, shimmering mark that was beginning to form on her own skin, just above her heart. It was a delicate, intricate pattern, like a sliver of the moon itself had been etched onto her skin. Caden's gaze fell upon it, his amber eyes widening in awe and reverence. "The mark of the moon," he whispered, his voice thick with an emotion that was a mixture of wonder and possessiveness. "It's a sign that the bond is complete. You're truly mine now." He reached out, his fingers gently tracing the glowing mark on her skin, sending a shiver of pure, unadulterated pleasure through her. And then, under the watchful gaze of the moon, he lowered his head and captured her lips in a kiss that was both a promise and a sealing of their fate, a kiss that tasted of the wilderness, of danger, and of a love that was as ancient and as powerful as the moon itself. Chapter 6: The Alpha's Claim. The primal energy of the forest clearing slowly receded, replaced by the intimate reality of their situation. Caden, no longer a wolf but a man, stood before her, the moonlight caressing the powerful lines of his body. The kiss had been a cataclysm, a collision of two worlds that left Lyah breathless and irrevocably altered. It was more than just a physical act, it was a sealing of a vow she hadn't known she'd made, a final click of a lock on a door she hadn't realized was open. As his lips left hers, he rested his forehead against hers, his breathing still ragged. His gaze dropped to the luminous mark above her heart, and he traced its delicate lines with a reverence that made her skin tingle. "The mark of the moon," he repeated, his voice a low, possessive rumble. "It doesn't just signify the bond, Lyah. In our world, it is a public declaration. It announces to every shifter, friend and foe, that you are the mate of an alpha. You are a Luna." The word hung in the air, heavy with a weight she couldn't begin to comprehend. Luna. It sounded ancient, powerful, and utterly terrifying. "It affords you a status, a protection under my name and the laws of my pack," he continued, his amber eyes locking with hers, "but it also makes you a target. Anyone who wishes to challenge me to weaken my pack will now see you as the most direct way to do so." The rogue they had just fought was no longer a random encounter, but a chilling premonition of the dangers that now surrounded her. They returned to the hotel as the city was stirring to life, the mundane world a jarring contrast to the primal truths that had been revealed under the moon. The familiar luxury of her room now felt like a fragile shell, a temporary shield against a world teeming with unseen dangers. The unspoken question of "what now?" loomed over them. Lyah knew with a sinking certainty that her old life, the one with art galleries and deadlines and lonely nights with takeout, was gone. Caden seemed to read her thoughts, his expression softening as he took her hands in his. "You can't stay here," he said gently, confirming her fears. "It's not safe. The rogue was likely a scout, testing my territory's boundaries. Now that they know I have found my mate, they will be back." "Take me with you," Lyah said, the words leaving her lips before her conscious mind could even form them. It wasn't a question, but a statement of fact. The thought of being separated from him, of facing this new reality alone, was more terrifying than any rogue wolf. A slow, relieved smile spread across Caden's face. "I wasn't giving you a choice," he admitted, a possessive glint in his eyes. "My wolf would tear the world apart before it let you out of its sight. I have to take you home. To my pack. They need to meet their Luna." He began to pack a small bag for her, his movements efficient and decisive, while Lyah stood in the middle of the room, a stranger in her own life. She had to call the gallery, make an excuse, a lie. She had to abandon the exhibition she had poured her heart and soul into. The sacrifice felt immense, yet when she looked at Caden, at the unwavering promise of protection and a love she was just beginning to understand in his eyes, she knew it was a price she was willing to pay. With a deep breath that was part surrender and part exhilaration, she picked up her phone. Her old life was over. Her new one, as the Luna of a werewolf pack, was just beginning. Chapter 7, A World Unseen. The journey from the heart of the bustling city to the untamed wilderness of Caden's territory was a journey between worlds. As the concrete and steel gave way to rolling hills and dense forests, Lyah felt as though she were passing through a veil, leaving behind everything she had ever known. Caden drove with a quiet confidence, his presence a steady anchor in the swirling sea of her emotions. He used the time to teach her, to prepare her for the life that awaited her. He spoke of the intricate society of the werewolves, a world hidden in plain sight, governed by ancient laws and traditions. He explained the pack structure, a complex hierarchy with the alpha at its pinnacle. The alpha is the head, the final authority, he said, his gaze fixed on the winding road ahead. But the Luna is the heart. She is the diplomat, the nurturer, the emotional core of the pack. She provides a balance to the alpha's strength. Lyah listened, a knot of anxiety tightening in her stomach. How could she, a human who curated art, possibly fulfill such a role? Caden seemed to sense her apprehension. You won't be alone, he reassured her, his hand briefly leaving the wheel to cover hers. The bond will guide you. And you have a strength you don't even realize, Lyah. A strength my wolf recognized the moment it saw you. He told her about the rogue they had encountered, confirming her fears that it was not a random attack. There are other packs, those who don't follow the old laws. They see strength as something to be taken, not earned. They encroach on territories, they challenge alphas. They will see you, a human Luna, as a weakness in my leadership. The revelation sent a chill down her spine, but it also ignited a spark of defiance. She would not be a weakness. She would not be the downfall of the man who had turned her world upside down. Her questions became more pointed, more practical. How do you live among humans? What are the rules about shifting? What happens if someone finds out? Caden answered each question with a patient, unwavering honesty, slowly painting a picture of a world that was both dangerous and beautiful, a world of fierce loyalty and ancient magic. As they drove deeper into the wilderness, Lyah began to feel a change in the air. It was a subtle shift, a thrumming energy that seemed to resonate with the mark above her heart. The world seemed more vibrant, the colors of the autumn leaves more vivid, the scent of the pine forest more intoxicating. You can feel it, can't you? Caden murmured, a pleased smile playing on his lips. The heart of the packlands. The territory recognizes you. It's welcoming you home. The word home should have felt foreign, but strangely it didn't. As they rounded a final bend, the forest opened up into a sprawling valley, a breathtaking panorama of natural beauty and subtle signs of civilization. A thin tendril of smoke rose from a chimney in the distance, and she could just make out the shape of buildings nestled amongst the trees. They had arrived. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic mix of terror and anticipation. This was it. The edge of her old world, and the beginning of her new one. Chapter 8, The Alpha's Home. The pack settlement, which Caden called Stone Creek, was nothing like the primitive village Lyah might have imagined. It was a marvel of architecture and nature intertwined, a community built in harmony with the surrounding forest. Houses crafted from dark wood and local stone were nestled into the hillsides, their large windows reflecting the towering trees. Winding stone paths connected the dwellings, and a sense of peaceful, purposeful activity filled the air. This was not a place hidden from the modern world, but a part of it, yet separate, a sanctuary. Their arrival did not go unnoticed. As Caden's vehicle rolled to a stop in front of the largest of the houses, people began to emerge from their homes, their gazes a mixture of curiosity, respect, and undisguised scrutiny. Lyah felt 100 pairs of eyes on her as she stepped out of the car, and her carefully constructed composure threatened to crumble. Caden was instantly at her side, his hand a warm, possessive weight on the small of her back, a silent declaration to all who watched. Two figures detached themselves from the growing crowd and approached them. The first was a man, his presence second only to Caden's in its authority. He had kind, weathered eyes and a calm demeanor, but Lyah could sense the steel beneath his surface. "Elias," Caden greeted him with a nod. "This is Lyah." Elias, his beta, inclined his head respectfully, but his eyes were sharp, assessing her with a caution born of loyalty. "Alpha," he acknowledged, his gaze lingering on the still faint mark on Lyra's chest, which was visible just above the collar of her shirt. The second figure was a woman with silver-streaked hair braided down her back and the most serene face Lyah had ever seen. She moved with a gentle grace, her warm smile instantly putting Lyah at ease. "Clara," Caden said, his tone softening with affection. The woman, the pack's healer, stepped forward and took Lyra's hands in her own. "Welcome, Luna," she said, her voice like the soothing sound of a flowing river. Her eyes, full of ancient wisdom, met Lyra's, and for the first time since her arrival, Lyah felt a sense of genuine welcome. Clara's gaze fell to the mark. "The moon has chosen well," she murmured, her simple words a balm to Lyra's frayed nerves. But not all faces were so welcoming. Lyah could feel the weight of unspoken questions, the whispers that followed them as Caden led her towards the Alpha's house. She was an outsider, a human. The mark on her chest might have commanded a certain level of respect due to its significance, but it did not automatically grant her acceptance. She was an unknown quantity, a potential disruption to their way of life. She felt like an exhibit in her own gallery, placed on a pedestal to be judged and critiqued. As the heavy wooden door of the Alpha's house closed behind them, shutting out the prying eyes, the silence inside was deafening. The house was beautiful, a warm and inviting space of polished wood and natural light, but it didn't feel like a home. It felt like a cage, and the pressure of 1,000 expectations was pressing in on her from all sides. Chapter 9, Whispers in the Pack. Lyra's first full day at Stone Creek was a trial by fire. Every step she took, every word she spoke, felt as though it were being weighed and measured. Caden, ever protective, stayed close, his presence a comforting shield. But he couldn't be with her every second. He had Alpha duties to attend to, disputes to settle, and decisions to make. During those moments when she was alone, the undercurrent of pack politics became chillingly clear. Not everyone was as welcoming as Clara. The primary source of the dissent came from a she-wolf named Seraphina. She was beautiful, with fiery red hair and eyes the color of a stormy sea, and she carried herself with an air of aristocratic disdain. Lyah learned from Clara that Seraphina had long held ambitions of becoming Caden's mate, of standing beside him as Luna. Now, that dream had been snatched away by a human stranger. Seraphina's hostility wasn't overt, she was too clever for that. It was in the subtle, condescending tilt of her lips, the way she would offer backhanded compliments about Lyra's delicate human nature, the pointed questions about pack traditions she knew Lyah couldn't possibly answer. The incident came during the communal evening meal. Lyah, trying to find her place, had offered to help serve. Unfamiliar with the customs, she unknowingly took the seat reserved for the pack's eldest warrior. A shocked silence fell over the whole. It was Seraphina's voice, laced with false sweetness, that broke the quiet. "Oh, the poor thing doesn't know our ways," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "She's not one of us, after all. She can't be expected to understand things like honor and respect." The humiliation was a hot flush on Lyra's cheeks. She stammered an apology and quickly moved, but the damage was done. The whispers that followed her were like tiny, stinging barbs. Later, Clara found her sitting by the creek that ran through the settlement, trying to quell the tears of frustration. "Pay her no mind," the healer said, sitting beside her. "Her pride is wounded. A she-wolf's ambition can be as sharp as her claws." Clara began to speak, not of pack politics, but of the true meaning of being a Luna. "It is not about knowing every custom or being the strongest fighter," she explained gently. "It is about the heart. The Luna is the soul of the pack. She is the one who tends to the bonds that hold us together." Lyra's resolve hardened. She would not be driven out by whispers and petty cruelties. She had curated exhibitions that brought warring artists together, she had managed million-dollar budgets and fragile egos. She was more than just a delicate human. That night, as she lay in Caden's arms, she overheard two pack members talking outside their window. "A human Luna," one voice scoffed. "How long before her weakness gets our alpha killed?" The words were a knife to the heart, but they didn't break her. Instead, they forged her fear and humiliation into a steely determination. She would not be their weakness. She would be their strength. She would prove to them all, and to herself, that the moon had not made a mistake. Chapter 10. The Luna's Strength. The next morning, Lyah rose with a newfound purpose. If she was to be the heart of this pack, she needed to understand its soul. She would not win them over by trying to be a werewolf. She would win them over by being herself. She was a curator, a historian, a storyteller. Her strength lay not in tooth and claw, but in her mind and her empathy. She sought out Clara, not for comfort, but for knowledge. She spent hours in the healer's den, learning the names of herbs, listening to stories of past Lunas, absorbing the history and traditions of the Stone Creek pack with the same focus she would have given a new art collection. She then approached the pack elders, not as their Luna demanding respect, but as a student seeking wisdom. She sat with them, listening for hours as they recounted tales of the pack's founding, of great hunts and terrible battles. She asked insightful questions, showing a genuine respect for their culture and their legacy. Her interest was not a performance. It was real, and the elders, initially wary, began to soften, their gruff exteriors melting away to reveal a deep pride in their history. Her opportunity to prove her worth came in an unexpected form. A dispute had been simmering between two of the pack's most prominent families over the allocation of hunting grounds for the coming winter. Tensions were high, and Caden's attempts at mediation had been met with stubborn pride from both sides. It was a complex issue, rooted in generations of rivalry and tradition. Elias, the ever-cautious beta, was frustrated, seeing the conflict as a dangerous crack in the pack's unity. That evening, Lyah approached Caden and Elias as they studied the territorial maps. "May I make a suggestion?" she asked quietly. They looked at her, surprised. She had spent the day poring over the pack's written records, crude maps, and oral histories she had gathered from the elders. With the calm precision of a seasoned curator arranging a complex exhibit, she laid out a plan. She hadn't just looked at the current hunting grounds, she had researched their history. She pointed to an area of the territory that had been abandoned for decades due to an old superstition. Citing a story one of the elders had told her, she explained the origin of the superstition and presented evidence from old journals that suggested the area was now one of the most game-rich in their entire territory. Her proposal was simple. Instead of redividing the old, contested lands, the two families would be given the honor of jointly re-establishing a new hunting ground, turning their rivalry into a partnership for the good of the pack. There was a stunned silence. Elias stared at her, his expression one of dawning respect. It was a solution that was both innovative and deeply respectful of their traditions. It didn't just solve the problem, it strengthened the pack. Serafina, who had been lingering nearby, scoffed. She reads a few old books and thinks she can solve everything. But her words lacked their usual sting. The logic of Lyra's plan was undeniable, and when one of the elders voiced his support, the tide turned. Caden watched her, his heart swelling with a pride so fierce it almost overwhelmed him. He had known her strength, the keen intellect and quiet determination that lay beneath her human fragility. Now, his pack was seeing it too. Later that night, as he held her, he traced the mark on her chest. It seemed to pulse with a soft, warm light, a reflection of the inner strength she had shown. "My Luna," he murmured into her hair, the words no longer just a statement of a bond, but a title she had truly begun to earn. For the first time, nestled in the heart of the pack, Lyah felt like she was truly home. Chapter 11. The First Hunt. As the vibrant hues of autumn deepened, a new energy coursed through Stone Creek. It was the season of the Great Hunt, an ancient tradition that was both a vital preparation for the coming winter and a deeply spiritual affair for the pack. It was a time when they honored the wild spirit within them, a celebration of their nature that Lyah, for all her growing acceptance, could never truly share. The night before the hunt, the air was thick with anticipation. The hunters, their bodies thrumming with the wolf's eagerness, gathered to receive blessings from the elders. Lyah stood beside Caden, a silent observer on the edge of a ritual that was not hers. Serafina didn't miss the opportunity to twist the knife. "Such a shame our Luna cannot run with us," she commented to a nearby warrior, her voice carrying easily to Lyah. "What good is a heart to the pack if it cannot feel the thrill of the chase? She can only wait for us to bring her scraps from the kill." The words were meant to sting, to emphasize Lyra's otherness, and for a moment, they did. A familiar sense of inadequacy washed over her. She couldn't shift, couldn't run with the wind in her fur, couldn't share in this fundamental part of their identity. But as she watched Caden, his face stern and focused as he planned the hunt with Elias, an idea sparked within her. She was not a hunter, but she was a curator. She organized, researched, and brought disparate elements together to create a cohesive whole. She spent the rest of the night with Clara and the elders, not lamenting her human limitations, but embracing them. She learned the old recipes for the post-hunt feast, dishes meant to restore strength and honor the spirits of the animals. She listened to the stories behind the feast, the meaning of each ingredient, the history of each tradition. While the hunters were gone, Lyah transformed the great whole. She didn't just prepare food, she curated an experience. With the help of the pack members who remained behind, she organized the preparation of the feast with an efficiency they had never seen. She directed the children in gathering specific herbs and colorful autumn leaves for decoration, turning a chore into a game. She convinced the elders to sit and share the stories of past hunts, weaving a tapestry of oral history that connected this hunt to all the ones that came before. She used her own unique skills to honor their traditions in a way no one else had thought to. When the hunting party returned at dusk, successful and exhilarated, they didn't walk into a hall of people passively waiting to be fed. They walked into a celebration already in progress. The scent of roasting meat and herbs filled the air, the hall glowed with warmth and candlelight, and the pack's history seemed to echo from the very walls. They saw their children proudly displaying the decorations they had gathered and their elders being honored as the keepers of their legacy. Caden stopped in the doorway, his gaze sweeping over the scene, finally landing on Lyah. She was not on the sidelines, she was at the very center of it all, the quiet beating heart that had pumped life into their oldest tradition. He saw the looks of admiration from his pack members, he heard the genuine laughter, and he knew. Later that night, as they stood on the balcony of their home, looking out at the sleeping valley, he pulled her close. "You did more than just cook a meal, Lyah," he said, his voice thick with pride. "You reminded them what it means to be a pack, what it means to have a home to come back to. My wolf hunts, but my soul comes home to you." In his arms, under the silent watch of the stars, Lyah felt a profound sense of belonging. She hadn't run with them, but she had helped guide them home. Chapter 12, A Shadow from the Past. The peaceful aftermath of the great hunt was shattered by the arrival of a lone wolf at the edge of their territory. He was an emissary from the Silver Moon Pack, their closest allies to the north. His news was grim, delivered in the quiet, tense atmosphere of Caden's study. The rogue pack had a name, the Bloodscars. And they had an alpha, a ruthless, power-hungry wolf named Silas. At the mention of the name, a cold stillness fell over Caden. Lyah saw his posture change, the muscles in his back and shoulders coiling with a tension that was more than just an alpha's concern for his territory. This was personal. Elias, standing by the window, let out a low growl. "Silas," he spat, the name tasting like poison. "I thought he was dead." Caden's voice was dangerously low when he finally spoke. "He should be." He turned to Lyah, his amber eyes dark with a history she didn't know. "Silas and I grew up in the same pack. He was my second, my closest friend." The words hung in the air, a stark contrast to the menace the name now carried. Caden recounted a story of ambition curdling into madness. Silas had believed in strength above all else, strength taken by force, power built on fear. He had challenged the old alpha, not in an honorable duel, but through murder and betrayal. Caden had been the one to stop him, to fight him, and ultimately to exile him, believing him too wounded to survive. "I was wrong," Caden said, his voice laced with self-recrimination. "I showed him a mercy he did not deserve, and he has spent the years since building a pack of outcasts and murderers who share his twisted philosophy. The Bloodscars don't respect territory or tradition. They take what they want. And now," his gaze fell on Lyah, "they know I have found my mate." The implication was clear. Silas would not see Lyah as the heart of the pack, he would see her as a vulnerability, a human weakness in the armor of the alpha who had defeated him. The threat was no longer a faceless pack of rogues, but a vendetta, a shadow from Caden's past reaching out to destroy his future. A grim efficiency descended upon Stone Creek. The peaceful community Lyah had come to know transformed into a disciplined military encampment. Patrols were doubled. The warriors trained with a new, deadly seriousness, their playful sparring replaced with silent, brutal practice. The shift in atmosphere was jarring. Lyah watched as Caden became consumed by his duty. He was the alpha at war, his every waking moment spent with Elias and his top warriors, poring over maps, planning defenses, and anticipating the strategies of a wolf he once called brother. He grew distant, his mind a fortress she couldn't seem to breach. The easy intimacy they had shared was replaced by a chasm of unspoken fears and the heavy weight of command. Lyah had never felt more like an outsider, a fragile human in a world of predators preparing for battle, and she feared that the man she loved was being lost to the alpha he had to be. Chapter 13. The Luna's Vision. The pack sphere was a constant, living presence, a psychic hum that vibrated along the edges of Lyah's awareness. Through her bond with Caden, she felt it most keenly. Not just his worry for his people, but the deep personal burden of facing a demon of his own making. The stress manifested in her sleep. At first, the dreams were disjointed and chaotic. The flash of cold, dead eyes in a snarling wolf, the scent of smoke and pine, the terrifying sound of splintering wood and screams. She would wake up gasping, her heart hammering against her ribs, the phantom smells and sounds clinging to her like a shroud. She dismissed them as nightmares, her human mind trying to process the overwhelming anxiety that now saturated her life. But the visions grew more frequent, more specific. One night, she saw a clear image of a distinctive rock formation, 3 jagged peaks that looked like a wolf's teeth. She saw the blood scars moving through the forest beneath it, their fur matted, their eyes glowing with malevolent intent. It was a place she had never seen before. Shaken, she confided in Clara. She described the dreams, the clarity of the images, the overwhelming sense of reality that accompanied them. The old healer listened patiently, her wise eyes studying Lyah's face. "This is not just a dream, child," Clara said, her voice soft but certain. "The bond of an alpha and his Luna is a powerful conduit. In times of great need, the moon sometimes grants the Luna a gift. A sight that goes beyond what the eyes can see. Some of our greatest Lunas in history were said to have the sight." The idea was terrifying, another layer of impossibility added to her new life. Yet, she couldn't deny the feeling of truth in Clara's words. That night, she begged the moon, the universe, whatever was listening, for clarity. The vision that came was the most terrifying yet. She saw the main gate of Stone Creek, heavily defended by Caden and his warriors, ready for a frontal assault. But the attack wasn't coming from there. The vision shifted, flying over the forest to the western ridge, to a place Caden had once called the Widow's Pass, a treacherous, narrow path that had been sealed by a rockslide decades ago and was considered impassable. In her vision, the pass was open. And she saw Silas, a massive, dark-furred wolf with a scarred face, leading his warriors through it, preparing to descend upon the undefended flank of the village where the dens held the children and the elderly. She awoke with a scream, the vision burned into her mind. She scrambled from the bed and found Caden and Elias in the study, a single lantern casting long shadows on the maps spread before them. "The attack," she gasped, her voice trembling. "It's not coming from the north. It's the Widow's Pass. He's going to come through the western ridge." Elias looked up, his expression a mixture of pity and impatience. "Luna, with respect, our scouts have covered every approach. The Widow's Pass is sealed. It's impossible." He dismissed her words as a stress-induced fantasy. But Caden was watching her, his face unreadable. He saw the genuine terror in her eyes, the absolute certainty in her voice. He was a creature of logic and strategy, a leader who relied on tangible intelligence. But he was also a mate, bound to the woman before him by a force older than any strategy. He was torn between his mind and his soul, and the fate of his pack rested on his choice. Chapter 14. A Test of Trust. "I saw it, Caden. As clearly as I see you now." Lyra's voice was pleading, her hands clutching his arm. Silas was leading them. The pass is open. Elias shifted his weight, his skepticism a palpable force in the room. Alpha, all our intelligence points to a frontal assault. It's his way, brash and arrogant. Diverting our main force to a location that has been impassable for 50 years based on a dream. It's a risk we cannot afford. He was logical, his duty to protect the pack overriding all else. He saw a frightened human, not a Luna with a supernatural gift. Frustration and fear warred within Lyah. She knew how it sounded. She was a curator, not a seer. She needed evidence, something tangible they could believe. Her mind raced back over the past weeks, through every conversation, every document she had read. The maps, she said suddenly, turning to the table. The old maps from Elder Maeve's stories. She frantically unrolled the brittle parchments she had been studying. Here, she said, her finger tracing a faint, almost invisible line leading to the Widow's Pass. It's marked as a seasonal trade route, from before the rockslide. Which proves it existed, not that it's open, Elias countered, his tone firm. But wait, Lyra's eyes scanned the journals she had borrowed from Clara. Her fingers flew through the pages of an old pack ledger. Look at this entry. From about 20 years ago. A tremor shook the western ridge. Sent 2 warriors to check the old pass. No major changes noted. What if no major changes didn't mean it was still sealed? What if it meant the slide had already been cleared by then, perhaps by winter storms over the years, and the pass was just empty? No one has patrolled it since because everyone assumes it's blocked. It was a theory, a fragile thread of logic, but it was more than just a dream. Seraphina, drawn by the commotion, appeared in the doorway. She wants to send our warriors on a fool's errand, she sneered. Our Luna's nightmares will be the death of us all. Caden, are you really going to listen to this? This human's fantasy over your own beta? The room fell silent. Every eye was on Caden. This was the true test. Trusting Lyra's intuition was one thing, betting the lives of his entire pack on it against all military logic and the counsel of his most trusted warrior was another. It was a choice between the alpha and the mate. Caden looked from the concerned, pragmatic face of Elias to the desperate, pleading eyes of Lyah. He saw the evidence she'd gathered, thin as it was, and he saw the absolute conviction that shone from her. His wolf, his very soul, screamed at him to trust her, to protect her, to believe in her. He rolled up the map with a decisive snap. Elias, he said, his voice ringing with an authority that left no room for argument. Take half of our warriors and fortify the Widow's Pass. Move silently. I want them hidden and waiting. Seraphina, you will assist Clara with the defenses at the Great Hall. The rest of us will make a show of strengthening the northern gate. Elias stared at him, his face a mask of disbelief and dismay. Alpha, you are splitting our forces. If you are wrong. If I am wrong, Caden interrupted, his gaze locking with Lyra's, then my mate and I will be the first to die. But I am not wrong. He placed his hand over the mark on her chest, a public and profound gesture of faith. I trust my Luna. The words echoed in the tense silence, a gamble that would either save them all or doom them utterly. The pack began to move, their faith not in the plan, but in the Alpha who commanded it. Chapter 15, The First Blood. The night grew unnaturally still, the forest holding its breath. Stone Creek was a settlement divided, a fragile shell of defense split between the tangible threat at the main gate and the phantom menace in the western hills. Lyah could feel the doubt radiating from many of the pack members, a cold tide of fear held back only by their loyalty to their alpha. She was sequestered in the great hall with Clara, the elders and the children. The vast room, usually a place of joyous celebration, had been transformed into a grim sanctuary and field hospital, the air thick with the scent of antiseptic herbs and fear. Lyah refused to be a helpless victim. She moved through the hall with a calm she didn't feel, organizing supplies, comforting crying children, and offering reassurances to the anxious mothers. She was channeling her terror into action, her curator's mind finding order in the chaos. This, she realized, was also the role of a Luna, to be the steady hand in the storm. Suddenly, a distant howl cut through the night. It was not the familiar call of their own pack, but a discordant, savage cry filled with bloodlust. A moment later, another sound followed, a symphony of snarls, roars, and the sickening crunch of bone from the west. From the direction of the Widow's Pass. A collective gasp swept through the hall. Lyra's vision had been true. The hidden warriors, commanded by a now-believing Elias, had met the blood scars as they emerged from the pass. Silas's planned ambush had become a trap. The element of surprise was theirs. The battle was ferocious. Wounded warriors from both sides were soon carried into the great hall, and the grim reality of war descended. Lyah, her clothes quickly becoming stained with blood, worked alongside Clara, her hands steady as she cleaned wounds, bound gashes, and held the hands of the dying. She saw the true price of Silas's ambition, the terrible cost of Caden's past, and she felt not fear, but a cold, hard rage. The first wave of the attack was repelled. The blood scars, stunned by the prepared defense and suffering heavy losses, retreated into the woods to regroup. The immediate danger had passed, but everyone knew it was only a temporary reprieve. Caden returned to the hall shortly after, his body weary, his fur, now his skin, caked with the dirt and blood of battle. He was every inch the alpha warrior, yet his eyes sought out only one person. He strode through the chaos, his gaze locking with Lyra's. The pack members who had openly doubted her now looked at her with a new, profound respect. She wasn't just the alpha's human mate, she was the Luna who had seen the unseen, the heart that had guided the pack's fangs. In front of everyone, the wounded warriors, the elders, a silenced Seraphina, Caden pulled Lyah into his arms. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. He simply held her, his grip fierce and grounding. In that single, public embrace was a universe of gratitude, of awe, of a love that had been tested by fire and had emerged as unbreakable as steel. He had trusted his Luna, and she, in turn, had saved them all. As the pack tended to its wounds and prepared for the next assault, they were more unified than ever, bound together by the blood they had shed and by the quiet human woman who had proven herself to be the true heart of the wolf. The first battle was won, but Silas was still out there, and the war for Stone Creek had only just begun. Chapter 16. The Strategist's Gambit. The victory at Widow's Pass bought them time, but it was a reprieve drenched in blood. The great hall, once a sanctuary, was now a place of pain and mourning. The pack had lost 2 warriors, and many more were gravely injured. The initial wave of respect for Lyah had been replaced by a grim, somber reality. They had won the battle, but the war was far from over. Silas, driven by a furious, wounded pride, would not simply retreat. He would be back, and he would be merciless. Caden was consumed by the weight of his losses, the guilt of his past with Silas a heavy shroud over his spirit. He and his warriors fell into a defensive mindset, fortifying their borders, setting traps, and preparing for a prolonged siege. They were reacting, waiting for the enemy's next move. But Lyah, watching the exhaustion and fear begin to erode the pack's morale, knew that a defensive war was one they would eventually lose. They were outnumbered, and Silas could afford to bleed them slowly. Her mind, honed by years of analyzing complex artistic compositions and historical narratives, saw the conflict not just as a series of battles, but as a story with a protagonist and an antagonist. To win, they had to control the narrative. They had to stop reacting to Silas and make him react to them. She found Caden in his study, the room filled with the scent of old parchment and his own simmering anxiety. He was staring at the map, his jaw tight, his eyes tracing the defensive perimeter. "We can't just wait for him," she said softly, placing a hand on his tense shoulder. "We have to protect the dens, Lyah." "The children," he replied, his voice rough with fatigue. "I know. But a cornered animal is a predictable one. And right now, we are the ones in the corner." She pointed to the map, not to their defenses, but to the vast, wild territory beyond their borders. "You told me Silas's strength is his brutality, but his weakness is his pride. He was humiliated at the pass. He'll be angry, reckless. He'll expect us to cower behind our walls. So, we do the last thing he would ever expect." Elias and Seraphina entered the study, overhearing her last words. "And what would that be?" Seraphina asked, her tone still sharp, though lacking its earlier venom. She, too, had seen the truth of Lyra's vision and the cost of the battle. "We hunt," Lyah said, her voice clear and steady. The 3 werewolves stared at her. "Not for game. We hunt the hunters. We don't wait for him to bring the fight to our home. We take the fight to him." It was a radical idea, a departure from every defensive instinct a pack felt when its home was threatened. "It's too risky," Elias said immediately. "We don't know his numbers, or where he's camped." "But we know him," Lyah insisted, looking at Caden. "You know how he thinks. Where would he go to lick his wounds? Where would his pride take him?" Caden's eyes slowly lifted from the map to meet hers. A flicker of the strategic alpha she had first seen returned, cutting through the fog of his grief and guilt. He thought back, not to the monster Silas had become, but to the young wolf he had known. He remembered their favorite hunting spots, the secret places they had discovered as pups. There was one place, a network of caves by a waterfall, easily defended, but a place of great significance to them in their youth. It would be a place Silas would retreat to, not just for safety, but as a symbolic act of defiance. "The Black Falls," Caden breathed, a new light dawning in his eyes. "We can't launch a full-scale assault," Lyah continued, her mind working quickly. "But a small, elite team could move faster and more silently. A surgical strike. Not to wipe him out, but to sow chaos. To steal his supplies, to injure his key warriors, to remind him that we are not prey. We make him afraid to sleep in his own camp. We turn his own tactics of fear against him." It was a strategist's gambit, bold, audacious, and psychologically brilliant. It was not the plan of a warrior, but of a queen. Elias looked from Lyah to Caden, seeing the shift in his alpha's demeanor, the renewed sense of purpose. He saw the logic, the sheer, unexpected genius of it. For the first time, he looked at Lyah not as the Luna, the alpha's mate, but as a leader in her own right. The heart of the pack had just shown its teeth. Chapter 17, The Scent of the Hunt. The decision was made. The pack would go on the offensive. A small hand-picked team was assembled, Caden, Elias, and 4 of their most skilled and silent warriors. The rest of the pack, under the temporary command of the eldest warrior and with Seraphina coordinating the defenses, would remain to protect Stone Creek. The atmosphere in the settlement was transformed. The passive fear was replaced by a sharp, focused aggression. They were no longer waiting for the storm, they were riding into it. Lyra's role in the plan was not over. As the strike team prepared, she worked with Caden, her questions probing and insightful. "What are the caves like? How many entrances? What's the terrain? Who are his strongest fighters?" She was like a director preparing for a complex scene, visualizing every possibility, every potential outcome. She made them think not just as fighters, but as tacticians. Her most crucial contribution came from an unexpected source. While reviewing the inventory of Clara's healing supplies, she noticed a large stock of wolfsbane. The herb was a mild irritant to werewolves in its raw form, but Clara explained that in a concentrated, burnt form, the smoke was a powerful disorienting agent, causing confusion and impairing their heightened sense of smell. It wasn't lethal, but it could level the playing field. "We don't need to kill them all," Lyah reasoned, presenting the idea to Caden. "We just need to create a window of chaos." They devised a plan. The warriors would carry small, tightly packed pouches of the concentrated wolfsbane. They would infiltrate the camp at the Black Falls, placing the pouches near the cave entrances and the main campfire. On Caden's signal, they would ignite them, filling the area with the disorienting smoke while simultaneously launching a lightning-fast raid on their food and weapon supplies. The goal was to inflict maximum damage to morale and resources with minimal risk. As Caden prepared to leave, the weight of their gambit settled upon them. This was the first time they would be truly separated since he had stumbled into her hotel room. The bond that connected them stretched taut with the distance and the danger. He pulled her into a fierce embrace, burying his face in her hair, memorizing her scent. "What you have done for this pack, Lyah," he began, but couldn't find the words. "Come back to me," she whispered, her voice fierce. "That's all that matters." He looked at her, at the unwavering strength in her eyes, and for the first time, he understood the true power of their bond. It wasn't just a romantic connection, it was a partnership. He was the sword, and she was the mind that guided the strike. He shifted then, not into the full wolf, but into a state between, his senses sharpening, his muscles coiling with readiness. He gave her a final, lingering look with those intelligent amber eyes, a silent promise, before turning and melting into the forest with his warriors, their forms moving like grey ghosts through the twilight. Lyah stood and watched until they were gone, her hand resting over the mark on her chest. She could feel the steady, courageous beat of his heart through their bond, and she sent back all of her own strength, a silent prayer on the wind, for the hunters to return home safe. Chapter 18: The Alpha's Duel. The raid on the Black Falls was executed with lethal precision. Under the cover of a moonless night, Caden and his warriors moved like shadows, their paws silent on the damp earth. They placed the wolfsbane pouches as planned, the scent of their own controlled aggression masked by the roar of the nearby waterfall. On Caden's signal, the pouches were ignited. A thick, acrid smoke billowed into the Bloodscar camp, causing immediate confusion and panic. The wolves, their powerful sense of smell turned against them, stumbled about, choking and disoriented. Caden's team descended upon the chaos, a blur of fur and fangs. They were not there for a prolonged battle. They destroyed the enemy's food supplies, shattered their meager cache of crafted weapons, and inflicted several deep, debilitating wounds on Silas's key lieutenants before melting back into the darkness. The strike was a stunning success. But as Caden prepared to withdraw, a furious roar echoed from the main cave, a sound of pure, unadulterated rage. Silas emerged from the smoke, his massive dark form seemingly unaffected by the wolfsbane, his eyes burning with a hatred that was ancient and deeply personal. He ignored the chaos around him, his murderous gaze fixed only on Caden. "Brother," he snarled, the word a perversion of the bond they once shared. "You hide behind your human's tricks. Face me. Alpha to alpha." It was a challenge Caden could not refuse. To retreat now would be seen as cowardice, undoing all they had just accomplished. He met Silas in the center of the clearing, and the world seemed to shrink to just the two of them, two forces of nature locked in a deadly dance. Their fight was not like the brawl with the rogue, it was a brutal, intimate clash between two wolves who knew each other's every move, every strength, every weakness. Back at Stone Creek, Lyah felt the shift through the bond. The steady thrum of Caden's purpose erupted into a violent, chaotic storm of pain and rage. She gasped, stumbling back, her hand flying to her chest. She couldn't see the battle, but she could feel it. She felt the sickening tear of claws on his flank, the jarring impact of his body hitting the ground. The pack felt it too, a wave of distress washed over the settlement as they sensed their alpha in a battle for his life. In the clearing, Caden was weakening. Silas was fueled by years of festering hatred, a mad strength that Caden, burdened by leadership and love, could not match. Pinned to the ground, with Silas's jaws snapping inches from his throat, Caden felt a moment of despair. Then, through the bond, he felt Lyah. He felt her terror, but beneath it, he felt her unwavering belief, her fierce, defiant love. It was not a plea for his survival, but a command. A jolt of energy, pure and potent, surged through him. It was the strength of the Luna, the heart of the pack, pouring into its alpha. With a final, desperate roar, Caden used the last of his strength to throw Silas off, sinking his own teeth deep into his rival's shoulder. At that exact moment, Elias and the others, having completed their mission, returned. Seeing their alpha in peril, they fell upon the injured and disoriented Silas. The dark wolf, outnumbered and wounded, knew he was beaten. With a final, hate-filled glare at Caden, he disengaged and fled into the darkness, his remaining followers scrambling after him. Caden lay on the ground, shifting back into his human form, his body a canvas of deep, bleeding wounds. Elias rushed to his side, but Caden's eyes were unfocused, looking past his beta, past the forest, as if he could see all the way back to Stone Creek. He was alive, but the victory felt hollow. Silas had escaped. The head of the snake had not been severed, and Caden knew that the final, decisive battle was yet to come. Chapter 19: The Scars of Victory. The return of the strike team was a somber affair. They brought with them the news of their tactical success and Silas's retreat, but also their wounded alpha. The sight of Caden, leaning heavily on Elias, his body riddled with injuries that were healing far too slowly, sent a fresh wave of fear through the pack. The fight with Silas had been more than just physical, it had been a battle of souls, and it had taken a profound toll. Lyah met them at the edge of the settlement, her face a pale mask of control. She didn't cry or scream. She simply walked to Caden's side, her touch on his arm a steady, grounding presence. Her gaze met Elias's over Caden's head, and in that silent look, a new understanding passed between the Beta and his Luna. Respect. Partnership. In the days that followed, a strange quiet descended on Stone Creek. They were safe for now. Silas was wounded and his pack scattered. But the cost of their safety was evident in the solemn atmosphere of the Great Hall and the way Caden struggled to recover. His physical wounds were deep, but the true injury was to his spirit. The bond, which had been a source of strength, now transmitted his pain and exhaustion to Lyah, leaving her drained and perpetually anxious. She became his anchor. She sat with him for hours, not speaking, just being there. She took over the small, day-to-day decisions of the pack, consulting quietly with Elias and the elders, ensuring that the community continued to function. She was a natural leader, her quiet authority and empathetic wisdom earning her the unwavering loyalty of the pack. Even Seraphina, her pride humbled by Lyra's courage and Clara's sharp rebukes, began to offer her grudging assistance, her ambition slowly transforming into a sense of duty. One evening, as Lyah was changing the dressing on Caden's worst wound, he finally spoke, his voice hoarse. "He's still out there because of me. Because I was weak once. I let him live." Lyah stopped, her hands gentle on his skin. She looked into his eyes, seeing the guilt that was poisoning him more than any wound. "You weren't weak, Caden," she said, her voice firm. "You were merciful. You saw the brother he once was, not just the monster he had become. That is not a weakness. It is the heart of a true alpha. It's why this pack loves you. It's why I love you." Her words were a balm to his soul. She was not just his mate, she was his conscience, his clarity. He pulled her down, his kiss filled with a desperate, grateful love. In that moment, the shadows in his spirit began to recede. His healing, the true healing, had finally begun. They knew Silas would be back. But as Stone Creek healed its wounds and found its rhythm under the steady guidance of its Luna and the returning strength of its Alpha, they were no longer afraid. They were a single, unified entity, forged in battle and bound by loyalty. They had faced the darkness and survived. When the final battle came, they would face it together, not as a pack led by an Alpha, but as a family led by an Alpha and his Luna, their strengths intertwined, their hearts beating as one. Chapter 20, The Luna's Home. The final confrontation came not with a roar, but with a whimper. A month later, a gaunt and broken Silas stumbled into their territory, not with an army but alone. His pack had deserted him, his ambition having finally crumbled into ruin. He challenged Caden one last time, a desperate, pathetic duel that was over in minutes. Caden, fully healed and radiating a calm, absolute authority, defeated him easily. But this time, there was no mercy. For the safety of his pack, his family, his mate, Caden delivered the Alpha's justice. The shadow of the past was finally gone. Peace settled over Stone Creek, a deep, abiding peace that felt earned. The seasons turned, and Lyra's first winter in the mountains was filled not with cold and fear, but with warmth and laughter. She was no longer Lyah, the human curator. She was Lyah, Luna of Stone Creek. The title fit her as comfortably as her own skin. The mark above her heart was a permanent, shimmering testament to the impossible journey she had taken. She had found her place, not by changing who she was, but by embracing it. Her knowledge of history helped the pack reclaim lost traditions. Her organizational skills transformed their winter stores into a model of efficiency. Her empathy soothed disputes before they could fester. She was the heart, the mind, and the soul of the pack, a perfect counterpoint to Caden's strength. One crisp, sunny afternoon, she stood with Caden on the overlook, the same spot where he had first shown her the valley. The settlement below bustled with life. Children, wolf and human, played together in the snow, their laughter echoing in the clear mountain air. The scars of the battle had faded, leaving behind a community stronger and more united than ever. Caden wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. The bond between them was a calm, steady river of love and contentment. "Do you ever miss it?" he asked softly. "The city, the galleries, your old life?" Lyah thought for a moment, picturing the noise, the crowds, the structured solitude of her former existence. It felt like a lifetime ago, a story about someone else. She leaned back against his solid warmth, feeling the steady beat of his heart against her back. "I was curating stories of other people's lives," she said, her voice filled with a quiet wonder. "Here, I'm living my own." He turned her in his arms, his amber eyes, once wild and full of turmoil, now held nothing but a deep, adoring love for her. "He stumbled into the wrong hotel room," he murmured, a smile playing on his lips. "But his wolf refused to leave," she finished, her own smile mirroring his. It had started with one wrong door, a chance encounter that had shattered her world. But as Caden lowered his head to kiss her, a slow, promising kiss that spoke of 1,000 shared tomorrows, Lyah knew with absolute certainty that it had been the single most right thing that had ever happened to her. Fate hadn't let his wolf leave, and in doing so, it had led her to the one place she was always meant to be, home. The end.